Good evening. Welcome to Inside Out. I'm Pat Smith, and this is where we take you inside state, local, and federal government to bring that information out to you. To help us do that tonight, we have with us County Councilmember George Leventhal. George, welcome.
Hi, Pat. Good to be here with you.
Thanks. George, tell our viewers a little bit about your biography, your background. You've been on the council for a while now.
I'm about to begin my third term on the Montgomery County Council. I was first elected in 2002, re-elected in 2006, and in 2010. I'm chairman of the Health and Human Services Committee, and I'm going to be serving in the next council on the Planning, Housing, and Economic Development Committee.
So is the Planning, Housing, Economic Development a new assignment for you?
That's right. For the last 8 years, I've been on the Transportation and Environment Committee. That's been an excellent committee assignment for me. I was able to advance issues of clean energy and certainly tried to advocate for the Purple Line and other mass transit and transportation improvements. But I'm ready for a different assignment, and the Planning, Housing, and Economic Development Committee is a critically important committee, particularly next year when we'll be taking up a new housing policy to sort of look ahead to the next several decades. We've had really far-reaching efforts in Montgomery County to preserve a certain percentage of our housing stock as affordable for those who can't afford to live in Montgomery County. We provide some help. With a bad economy, that's becoming more challenging to require set-asides for affordable housing, and yet there's still a great need for those who are in Montgomery County's workforce to be able to live here in the county. And so we're going to have to apply some new approaches to housing policy. I'm looking forward to engaging in that discussion. And then, of course, economic development is so vitally critical now. We've got to work with the new industries, with environmental technologies, with our biomedical and life sciences industries to try to strengthen Montgomery County's economy and make it healthy once again. So I'm excited about this new committee assignment.
Well, with the merger of Walter Reed with the Bethesda Naval Medical Center and with the growth down at NIH and the biomedical corridor of I-270, that's a natural core or spine, if you would, for economic development. But where do the support staff live? That's what you're going to have to grapple with. Huh?
Those are two very important issues. Where can the workforce live? We also have to do a better job of leveraging the basic research. We do have hundreds of millions of federal dollars coming into this region for basic research. But what we haven't done as well as some other regions of the country is to leverage those basic research dollars down the stream towards application and commercialization so that you're actually creating and manufacturing products. What we want here in Montgomery County is we want ideas to be generated here, we want people to think of products, and then we want the products to be made here. And increasingly we will be able to do that with drugs and medical devices, but we've got to move some of the federal dollars. Some of the scientists who work in the federal labs are not used to the concept of commercializing their ideas. And as I say, other regions, the Boston region, the Palo Alto region, North Carolina, have done a better job of the commercialization, the application, moving from R to D, and then to marketing, and then to manufacturing. And so all of these are issues that I'm hoping Montgomery County will take a more sophisticated approach now that the need is so evident. There's a hunger, of course, to strengthen our economy and develop the high-wage, high-tech, science-based, future-oriented jobs that are going to put Montgomery County back in the forefront and make us competitive again.
And aren't we situated quite well geographically to be able to accomplish that?
Well, we certainly are.
There's a lot of competition because of the way the economy has been to grab onto a new field and to new developments, and science and medicine is where that is, as well as environmental things, but you're competing with Chicago, Cleveland, Detroit.
Yeah, but the quality of life here is very, very high. People want to live in this area. We have a nice climate, we have an educated workforce, we have access to cosmopolitan experiences in the District of Columbia and in Baltimore, and we need to partner too with the Baltimore region. Johns Hopkins University, the University of Maryland are really strong anchors for the kind of moving basic research to applied research to commercialization that we're talking about. And so we want to, and then we want to capitalize on our geographic advantages strengthen areas like the Great Seneca Science Corridor and the new East County Science Center that's under discussion to bring federal labs together with researchers and with the companies that will market the products that will result. So this committee, Planning, Housing, and Economic Development, really brings all of these issues together because we do the land use and planning. We identify areas in the county where we can locate the research, where we can locate the companies, and then we also support economic development to provide incentives where necessary to encourage companies to locate here or help them to expand, support business incubators that will, for startup companies, that will give them access to shared office space when they're just starting and they don't have the resources to rent their own space. So there's a whole range of approaches that we can take, I think, to bring about this high-wage, high-tech, science-based, future-oriented economy.
Now, you mentioned the East County Research Center. What is that?
Well,
or is it just a concept at this time?
It's mostly a concept. Over the last decade, a number of things have come together that I hope will help to address the jobs housing imbalance that we see in Montgomery County. As we know, there's a lot of housing on the east side. Most of the jobs are on the west side, and so that creates traffic backups where the people who live near to Prince George's County are commuting to jobs on the west side near to NIH or trying to get to Virginia or to the District of Columbia, of course, for employment. And so trying to generate more employment on the east side will actually reduce traffic and shorten commutes for people who already live there. And we have a great opportunity, again, of forces coming together. The Food and Drug Administration has now relocated to White Oak in the northern part of Silver Spring. We have Washington Adventist Hospital that is planning to move to the very same area, very close to the Food and Drug Administration. So you'll have a hospital that's able to do teaching and research, clinical trials, these sorts of things that are necessary. And then we also have the East County Science Park on property that was formerly a sludge plant, a WSSC sludge plant that the county acquired several years ago for precisely this purpose, to be a business incubator, co-located with the Food and Drug Administration and with Washington Adventist Hospital. So it's going to be an East County Science Center that will take shape over the next decade or so.
And I hadn't heard the Washington Adventist Hospital was going to build a new facility. Are they going to close the one in Tacoma Park?
Yes, that's correct. Over the course of the next decade, they will be shutting down in Tacoma Park and moving north to Cherry Hill Road, right on the Montgomery-Prince George's County border.
Right, okay. So they will
That's still subject to approval by the state of Maryland, but it looks very likely.
Right. And they'll be east of 29?
East of Route 29, right on the Montgomery County-Prince George's County border.
Okay. And they'll have great access to the new ICC?
Well, the ICC will assist in bringing together, obviously, the west side of the county and the east side of the county and making it easier for those who may be doing research at NIH to commute to FDA, and maybe will make it easier for the Great Seneca Science Corridor on the west side, which is where the universities at Shady Grove are already located, to connect with the East County Science Center and to get to 95 and to Baltimore. It certainly will provide easier access for researchers and for industry.
Speaking of that, and you're just coming off the Transportation Committee, the ICC seems to be moving along quite quickly.
Yeah, well, if we continue to have mild weather, then the first segment may open before the end of this calendar year. I've ridden on the ICC now. I mean, it's ready to ride. They just have a few finishing touches, guardrails and that kind of thing, make sure it's safe. But the first segment between Gaithersburg and Georgia Avenue is ready to open imminently.
Really?
That's correct.
This is a surprisingly well-run project for most experiences we have with road construction and stuff like that. Run into a lot of problems. And
well, once it finally got under construction, yes. Of course, it was 40 years of debate, but now it's there, and I know there's hard feelings about it from some who opposed it, but it's in the ground, and I do think it's going to improve mobility across Montgomery County.
And seeing we're talking east-west, what about the Purple Line?
I'm a very strong supporter of the Purple Line. I'm very pleased that Governor O'Malley was reelected. I'm optimistic that we will be able to proceed and that we should be able to break ground in about 2015. Everything's looking very promising. The engineering studies, the environmental studies are all very well underway. The route has been determined, and we have an excellent relationship with the federal government. Of course, I hope President Obama is reelected also. The political leadership is very important for this project. We have the state leadership in place now with Governor O'Malley coming back for a second term, but we need strong support from the federal government because at least half of the cost will be paid for with federal dollars.
Now, is it going to be above-ground light rail?
Primarily, it's above-ground light rail. That's right. There's a few areas where it goes underground, but it is a light rail system, and the route has been designed, and it will also improve east-west access and mobility from Bethesda to Silver Spring, to the University of Maryland, to New Carrollton, bringing together several legs of the red line, several legs of Metro, the red line, green line, orange and blue lines, and making it easy for all of us in the down county to attend a Terps game if we want to without sitting in traffic, and improve access for jobs and commuting, take cars off the road in the lower part of the county. I think it's going to improve mobility and improve our quality of life.
So the route, you say, has been chosen. Is it going to come inside the Beltway to the Silver Spring Metro Station?
That's correct.
And then across the East-West Highway type of corridor to Bethesda?
Well, it's not along East-West Highway. It's along a dedicated right-of-way that's separate from traffic between Bethesda and Silver Spring, and then from Silver Spring Metro it will go north along Wayne Avenue and then down University Boulevard to the University of Maryland and then into Prince George's County.
Interesting. 2015, you think they'll break ground?
That's the current schedule, yeah.
There certainly is a need for it.
There certainly is.
Well, in your new committee assignment, what is your focus? What are you looking forward to accomplishing it?
As I said,
in addition to economic development.
Right. So in the coming year, 2011, we will take up a new housing policy for Montgomery County. We have to look at the mix of housing that we have. We want all types and all prices of housing. We want to make sure that we have very attractive high-end housing to business executives and scientists and researchers, the kind of people we want to attract, but we also need to make sure that we have amply available single-family, less ample housing and a large stock of rental housing. For many, many years, we've had a program where new development needed to set aside a percentage, 12.5%, of newly constructed units for what are called MPDUs, the moderately priced dwelling units. And when that was adopted in the 1970s, it was a model for many other communities around the country. We're beginning to run out of available land, and the economics of setting aside those units are becoming challenging. And so we have to look at some new and innovative approaches to maintaining our stock of affordable housing, maintaining our stock of rental housing. We need to advocate for those who live in rental housing, even as we provide opportunities to upgrade the stock of housing in areas where it needs to be renovated and rehabilitated. So it's going to be challenging. We want to improve urban areas like Silver Spring, Long Branch, Wheaton, but we don't want to displace people who are living in the affordable housing that's located there. And so all of these challenges are going to come into play, I think, as we discuss a new housing policy. And my focus for many years will continue to be housing for the homeless. We're a community that's very dedicated and compassionate, and it should be a manageable challenge. We have, on any given day, about 1,000 to 1,100 homeless people in Montgomery County. That should be a manageable number. And so even though our budget is stressed, we need to continue investing in our Housing Initiative Fund and in the Housing First program that gets homeless people into permanent, stable housing, because we've already seen a reduction in the prevalence of homelessness as a result of our efforts there. So all of these issues are going to come into play in the housing policy that we'll take up in 2011.
The homeless issue, what are we doing for housing? Are they still opening up in cold weather schools and the county executive office building and places like that for sort of emergency shelter?
We don't have a shelter in the executive office building, but we do have shelters in many places in Montgomery County. But shelter is really not the best permanent solution. Clearly, what you need to provide is a stock of permanent, stable housing for people to escape the condition of homelessness. If you're sleeping overnight in a shelter, you're still homeless.
You're still homeless.
And so what we want is a long-term permanent solution where those who were homeless aren't homeless anymore.
We'll be right back. Time for us to take a break, but I want to talk about the homeless problem and permanent housing for them as soon as we come back.
Terrific.
I'm Pat Smith. You're watching Inside Out. With me tonight is George Leventhal. He's a county council member. Welcome back. You're watching Inside Out. I'm Pat Smith, and this is where we take you inside state and local federal government and bring that information out to you. Helping me do that this evening is George Leventhal. He's a member of our county council, now entering his third term, having been just reelected. And George, I didn't mention earlier, you're county council at large, right?
That's right. I represent everyone in Montgomery County.
So you're elected countywide.
That's correct.
Okay. Just before the break, we were talking about the homeless housing crisis that we have here in the county, and you mentioned that at any given moment there's 1,000 to 1,100 people on the street. What kind of permanent housing do you plan on having available, or you'd like to see available? Is it, by that I mean, is it government owned, or is it developer owned?
We launched an initiative called Housing First in 2008, and in the first 2 years of its operation, we've been able to provide permanent, stable housing for between 300 and 400 homeless individuals and families. And what we saw in the last one-day count of homelessness, which is conducted by the Council of Governments here in the region, was that even in a bad economy, even in the midst of a foreclosure crisis, there were fewer homeless people in Montgomery County in 2010 than there were in 2009. Now, that's a one-year data point. We've got to watch the data over time, but the hope is that by placing homeless individuals in permanent, stable housing first, they are obviously no longer homeless, and the overall number, the prevalence of homelessness, can be reduced. That's the goal, and other communities have seen it happen. In the past, and even just now you asked about homelessness, you thought about shelter. Well, a temporary shelter maintains the client in the homeless condition. And in the past, there was a different paradigm. The thinking among social service providers was that we'll provide housing, or we'll assist the client to find housing when he or she is, quote, ready. That is, when he or she has come to terms with his or her substance abuse problem, or his or her mental illness, or whatever may have been contributing to that individual's inability to manage in the economy and in society. There are several problems with that, and the data show that, first of all, just the example that I often give is who is schizophrenic, hallucinating, whose condition can be managed through medication, but that individual doesn't have a medicine cabinet to keep her meds. It isn't likely she's going to take her meds, and therefore she isn't going to be able to cope with the condition that contributed to her homelessness in the first place. In the case of substance abusers, the data clearly show that once placed in permanent housing, the client uses drugs and alcohol far less and is able to manage his or her condition in a better way. And so understandably, faith-based organizations wanted clients, again, to stop the bad behavior before he or she was placed in housing, or perhaps experience a religious conversion, you know, accept Jesus Christ as his or her personal savior, or whatever the religious emphasis was. Among the faith community, among nonprofit providers, there's a growing understanding that that paradigm needs to shift, that finding housing first is the best way to assist the client to get his or her life in order, and whatever decisions the client makes about faith is separate. But we do work with the religious community very, very closely. There's the Montgomery County Coalition for the Homeless, and we have Interfaith Works, which is a coalition of faith-based organizations around Montgomery County, and many other organizations that provide access to shelter and permanent stable housing. We're trying to de-emphasize shelter in favor of permanent stable housing and make that shift in the client's best interest.
So is the concept that it's a transitional permanent housing? I mean, are they going to be there for a long time? Do they pay rent, or is it they gradually the graduate out of it?
Well, let me tell you, and this is one of the reasons, there's many reasons why I'm so excited about both of my committee assignments. I continue as chairman of the Health and Human Services Committee, which oversees the programs that meet the needs of those who require the most help from government. And now on the Planning, Housing, and Economic Development Committee, where housing as a focus is so important for the very clients that need the help of the Health and Human Services Department. And so bringing together those strains, advocating for those with the greatest need, and developing policy that makes sure that we have a mix of types and prices of housing throughout Montgomery County. So we have expensive and highly desirable housing, and we have affordable, smaller, less spacious housing. Working with landlords, our Department of Health and Human Services and Department of Housing and Community Affairs identifying landlords throughout Montgomery County so that we can place formerly homeless clients in housing arrangements where they're not conspicuous, they're just part of the community, they're just a new neighbor moving in.
Excellent. Mentioning your committee with the Health and Human Resources, CHIP.
Yes.
The acronym CHIP. Let's talk about that a little bit.
So we spend a lot of money on services for the needy. And the question, as with homelessness, is, are we making progress? For an individual client who's helped, we know that that individual's condition has improved. But are we reducing the prevalence of these conditions? Are we becoming a healthier county? And the only way that we know that is by tracking data over time. As with homelessness, we need to know, are we making progress on reducing childhood obesity? Are we making progress on reducing infant mortality? Are we increasing life expectancy? Are we addressing the prevalence of heart disease, cancer, diabetes? How do we know whether the money that we're spending on prevention, education, direct access to care is actually making a difference in the overall prevalence of these problems? And so what the Community Health Improvement Program will do is it will assemble a wide range of data indicators in one place. It's going to be called Healthy Montgomery. It's going to be a website that we're going to roll out by the end of this year where anyone interested in knowing where does Montgomery County stand on all of these health conditions and data indicators that tell us how healthy we are. And then over time we'll be able to track time sequence data that enable us directly to measure the result of our efforts at education, prevention, and direct access to care. So I think Montgomery County has a compassionate public, but times are hard, the budget is strained, and people want to know that if we're spending their tax dollars, that we're spending them wisely and that we're making a difference. And by measuring these data indicators, how healthy are we as a community, I hope that we'll be able to make the case for continued investment. And if we're not making progress, we can analyze why, what's working and what's not.
Do we have access for everyone to health care in Montgomery County?
We do not. We do not. We have about 100,000 residents of this county who do not have health insurance. I've been very much involved in spearheading a program called Montgomery Cares, which this year will provide access to health care for more than 26,000 uninsured and poor residents of Montgomery County. We need to continue those efforts, but of course our budget is strained. Fortunately, under President Obama's leadership, we now have an actively engaged federal government that's going to be creating pools, buying pools for people without health insurance to make health insurance affordable and providing tax incentives for those who can't afford health insurance on their own. That's new. That will be coming into effect in 2014. That will assist in access to health care. But between now and then, it's still up to Montgomery County to provide access to clinics and doctors that make sure that if you don't have insurance in Montgomery County, and you're sick, we're still going to get you to see a doctor.
Okay. Looking ahead, the economy seems to be getting a little bit better, coming back slowly, but we have structural deficit in the county budget. And one of the big items, of course, are the contracts for the police, the contracts for the firemen, the contracts for the teachers. Where do you get to make a cut?
Right. The county's forecasting steady but very, very moderate growth in revenues over the course of the next 6 years. We're looking at increases in revenues of perhaps 3% a year. But as we forecast ahead on the cost of utilities, on our debt service obligations, which we must meet, the bonds that we use to build buildings, and on employee compensation and benefits and long-term agreements that have been reached to provide retirement and health insurance benefits, our expenses are outpacing our revenues. We're looking at a situation over the long term where we're going to need to bring those expenses in line with revenues, and the big enchilada is compensation and benefits. It's 80% of everything we spend is people. Government is a people-based enterprise, and so we need to have a real dialogue with our employees. We need to have a real partnership with our school system. We can't continue to negotiate long-term agreements that we can't afford. And so that's a very active dialogue right now. This is probably the most significant issue that's going to be facing the new county council, is bringing our expenses in line with our revenues now and in the future, so that we have a sustainable course, not a course that we can't afford.
So would it start with like new police officers coming in, wouldn't have the long range potential for retirement and health benefits, or it would be a lesser percentage than what's currently available? Or are present school teachers and police officers and firefighters in jeopardy of having what they anticipated as a retirement check being cut?
All of those issues are subject to bargaining. There is a new round of bargaining on contracts for all of the employees we're talking about. School system employees represent most of our budget, and the school board will be sitting down at the bargaining table with the employee organizations for teachers and support staff and principals. And then with respect to county government, yes, county government employees, social workers, bus drivers, policemen, firefighters, all of those employees, all of their contracts are up for renegotiation. And so the range of issues that you're discussing, what will be the direct salaries, what will be the current expectation of contribution to an employee's health insurance, what will be the expectation of retirees' contribution to their own health insurance, what sort of health benefits retirees get after they're finished working, and what sort of retirement arrangement will they have. I'm 47 years old. I've been in the workforce since I was 22, 25 years in the workforce. I never had a defined benefit plan. I don't expect a guaranteed pension. What I have, which is what most employees have in the 3 different retirement funds that I've contributed to over the course of my career, is a defined contribution plan, often described as a 401k. Many county employees have that. The benefits changed in the early 1990s for county employees. Some county employees have a defined benefit pension. Whether the county can continue to provide a guarantee of a pension for retirees will be discussed at the bargaining table. It'll be discussed with the school system. It'll be discussed with county government employees, Park and Planning, Montgomery College. All of these issues are going to be up for discussion in the next few months. And as we look at the structural deficit, what we've learned about the need to bring our expenses in line with our expected revenue will be the platform on which those negotiations will take place in the context that will affect what is ultimately negotiated.
That's some very difficult work that lies ahead.
Well, it is difficult. We're not looking at the opportunity to launch a whole lot of new programs. We're not looking at the opportunity to promise great increases in spending on things that people really care about, like libraries and parks. We're in a constrained time. But I think taxpayers understand, because people sitting around the kitchen table know that they're having to manage their household budgets with much more care than perhaps they did in the past. And we've had the economic shock, and I think that's healthy. We need to learn something from this experience and look ahead to the future on a more sustainable course. We can't expect that spending will increase every year. We can't afford it.
George, tell our viewers how they can contact you, how they can be in touch, and what your website is.
Absolutely. So, again, I represent every resident of Montgomery County, so wherever you live in Montgomery County, I work for you, and my office telephone is 240-777-7811. Montgomery County's website is montgomerycountymd.gov, and if you go to that website, click on the left-hand side on County Council, you'll come up with the 9 faces of the council members who represent you. You click on my face. You can email me that way on my website on the county site, montgomerycountymd.gov. I'm eager to hear from my constituents. I work very hard at constituent service. I'm a councilman 24/7. I'm up late answering my email every night. So I'm always glad to hear from my constituents.
Great. George, thanks very much for coming in.
Good to be with you, Pat.
I'm Pat Smith. This is Inside Out. We're here on Channel 16 on Tuesday evening at 10 p.m., Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday at 7:30. Thanks for watching.